History often leaves behind silent witnesses, not kings or armies, but stone, brick, and mortar. Buildings tell stories that written records cannot. And when we look closely at the architecture scattered across the world, from Moscow to Samarkand, from St. Petersburg to even cities in America, we find structures that raise troubling questions. They do not seem to belong to the time they are said to have been built. These are the echoes of Tartaria, the so-called architecture of giants. Step into the old streets of St. Petersburg. The city, officially built in the 18th century, is filled with massive stone palaces, wide boulevards, and monumental cathedrals. Historians insist this grandeur was achieved in just a few decades under the rule of Peter the Great and Catherine. But how plausible is that? How could a small population of peasants and artisans construct such colossal buildings with such perfect symmetry in so little time? Now consider the Winter Palace. Its scale, its detail, and its massive stone blocks suggest engineering far beyond the tools and methods officially available in the 1700s. Did the Russian Empire truly build it from scratch? Or was it inherited from a civilization that came before? A civilization like Tartaria? The mystery deepens when we expand our view. Across Central Asia, in Samarkand, Bukhara, and Khiva, stand the remnants of structures covered with intricate mosaics, towering minarets, and domes that gleam like jewels. They are attributed to Islamic dynasties, yet their scale and design hint at knowledge shared across continents. The same domes, arches, and grand layouts can be found in Moscow, in Istanbul, and even in the great expositions of 19th century Europe and America. Why do these styles repeat in such distant places? Some researchers believe that what we call Tartarian architecture was not limited to one nation, but part of a global network of design and engineering, a style that belonged to a forgotten empire. What is most striking is how often this architecture includes domes, spires, and complex acoustics. Could these have served a purpose beyond beauty? Some suggest they may have been part of an energy system, harnessing natural forces in ways we can barely understand today. And then there are the mud flood buildings. All across Europe and Asia, there exist structures where the lower floors appear buried beneath the ground. Windows open into soil, doors lead nowhere, and what should be the first floor is often meters below street level. Historians explain this as the result of rebuilding, changing street levels, or poor planning. But what if it points to something else? An event that covered entire cities with layers of earth, leaving only the upper levels visible. If true, then much of this architecture could be far older than we are told, survivors of a disaster that wiped out Tartaria. Look also to America. In cities like Chicago, San Francisco, and New York, the late 19th century saw a sudden explosion of grand architecture, cathedrals, domes, and ornate government buildings. They were supposedly built within a few years for world fairs and exhibitions, only to be destroyed or dismantled soon after. Why spend so much effort on temporary structures? Some suggest these buildings were not constructed for fairs at all, but repurposed remnants of Tartarian cities, erased under the guise of progress. Even more curious are the star forts. Across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, we find vast geometric fortresses shaped like stars, perfectly aligned with astronomical directions. Official history tells us they were military defenses, but their sheer number, size, and precision suggest another purpose. Were they part of a global system of power generation or communication? Or were they symbols of an empire's reach, stretching farther than we ever imagined? The architecture of giants forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Could ordinary people, with limited tools, truly have built such immense and sophisticated structures in so short a time? Or were they inheriting, repurposing, and renaming the cities of a lost empire? If Tartaria existed, then these buildings are not just monuments of stone. They are the last voices of a silenced civilization. When we walk among these structures today, we often admire their beauty without asking how or why they exist. But once you begin to question, it becomes impossible to stop. The patterns, the repetition, the sheer impossibility of the timelines. all point to a story untold. Perhaps history has been rewritten not to preserve truth, but to conceal it. Perhaps the architecture of giants is more than art. It may be the most enduring evidence that Tartaria was real, that it thrived, and that it was buried, not only under mud and soil, but under centuries of silence. And as long as these buildings stand, their stones will continue to whisper, "Remember us."